Hey everybody, it's Rad Chick. Long overdue video that I've been promising you guys. And I've been trying to get up the strength to do this all day. I've been having a really rough time ever since we got back from Michigan. I've got some weird lights on my face here. And I went to my favorite spot in the garden. And the funny thing is we have a storm coming in, and for some reason my neighbor starts watering his plants on the other side of the fence just as I start recording this video. And I can hear him listening to the Truth Factory, you know, the talking cat, the Truth Factory lady. And I hear MI6, blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of funny. I thought about actually starting the video. Then we can go listen in if you want. But anyway, about the only thing that I've gotten accomplished lately is I colored my hair purple for Chiari awareness, and then it faded to this pink that it is now, which was supposed to wash out, and it hasn't. But people keep asking me, oh my God, what did you color your hair with? Because it looks great, so I'm just leaving it. It'll grow out eventually. I've had some issues, some really big issues, and kind of a breakthrough in finding out what all of these little sideline things have been that didn't really fit the Chiari profile of a post-surgery patient. Although I'm not a typical Chiari patient, because I also had a broken neck that was fixed at the same time that I had surgery. This thing that I have going on here today, for whatever reason, my whole neck all the way down pretty much to my wrist, this arm is swollen. Like, this arm is like way bigger than my other arm. It's been like this for a week, and we don't know why. Just sometimes my muscles or like my extremities, like one leg will swell up really big, or one thigh will swell up really big, and we don't know why that's happening. And I am still trying to get my insurance problems straightened out, and it's been really difficult. It's been really difficult to get the health care that I need, and a lot of issues sorted out. And on top of it, I have felt like absolute crap. And I have a little story to tell you. First of all, let me start with the good news, and I apologize for all of the weird sounds in the background. Hopefully this video will come out okay. I have it on a piece of glass right now, the phone, so I don't know how it'll turn out. I might have to just shit can this one. I've actually recorded, this will be the third time that I've tried to record a video in the last week, and I don't even know what that is. A vibrating sound. There's a storm coming in. There's a lot of like truck traffic. A little while ago, I thought I heard gunshots. And it's Friday, so we have an airport on the other side of us. And so there was a lot of airport traffic coming in right now. And so you might hear some little planes, and I'll just pause if it starts to get too annoying. But anyway, as most of you know, if you've been checking out my posts on Patreon, and I'm going to stay with this format. I know a lot of people have been complaining about problems with their stuff not being seen and all that, and you know, I'm not in this to like get rich making money on Patreon. Obviously, if you see how many donations I'm getting, what this has afforded me to do so far is really some brain rehab, which has been just phenomenal, because I was able to like buy some craft supplies that otherwise I couldn't have afforded, and it's like kind of kept me busy over the last 6 months. And I'm hoping to actually open like an Etsy store and make some money from that, selling some of the things that I made while I was doing the brain rehab. And I can actually show you, because I have some of the things laid out here, what it is that I was making. Well, I have a necklace on, and this was like one of the first things that I made, although it doesn't really show up. I have, of course, the sun is on my face, but alright, it's a little kitty that has like a Shiva shell in it, and it's resin. I started playing around with resin art, and it's something that I thought it might be kind of like a challenge, and I can use, I mean, Florida, there's so much like stuff around here you can just pick up off the ground really and use, you know, as far as like flowers and leaves and moss and things like that. And I was able to get some clay, and I was able to get like, well, at first I got some resin that wasn't that good. It was really hard to like very strong smelling stuff. And then I got a different kind, and I started following all these people on Instagram that do resin art, and I just kept watching their videos like day after day after day after day and learning like from them how they did it. And then I started doing my own, and I started real small, and I'll turn this around and show you. Like, first I started doing, you know, like these little cats. I don't even know if this is going to be in focus, but like this is a cat. And I can make these into necklaces. Like, this is what I gave like my kids for Christmas and stuff. And I made them in different colors, and and they're not supposed to stick together like that. And I made some that are like, you know, I can't even think of his name. Van Gogh, Starry Night. And I made some that look like, trying to look like Mexican opals. And I made some that look like Monet water lilies. And I made some that I put BBs in them. I don't even know if I'm getting these in the picture, but so you get the idea. I made a bunch of cats. And then I took a paper plate and I made this for my mom, who lives in Canada. This took me like 2 months to make, and it has like little ferns in it. And this is supposed to be like a Van Gogh thing, because she has like this really pretty sunflower painting that this guy made her who died recently, who she was really good friends with. And so I made her this moon. And of course it glows in the dark. And I made it on a paper plate, but it got glued to the plate. You know, I made it like in a plate like that. And so Sean bought me a sander so I could like sand the resin. And so I'll never do this again in a paper plate for sure. And then like I made him this for Christmas, which is like, you know, Poe's raven with the beating heart, and it's not done. I made this like on aluminum foil, so like I have to sand all this off, but obviously with my gimpy arm right now, I'm not doing anything like that. And then I made little things like for my granddaughter, like zipper pulls. And then the really impressive thing that I'm most proud of is I started making trays, and these are like jewelry trays, or I guess you could, you know, roll your joints on it or whatever. You know, this one I made for my daughter for her birthday, because she has 2 daughters now, so there's a little jellyfish to put her jewelry on, and it has like a bunch of different layers and Florida sand, and I don't know if you take it outside, maybe you can see, like, of course the sun is gone now. You can kind of see like the different layers in it. So anyway, like, that's what I've been doing to, like, rehab myself, or trying to rehab myself. And this was my really extraordinary attempt at a Christmas tree this year. There's Godzilla and 2 crashed planes for Wigner. That was it. So, anyway, back to Michigan. So, we went to Michigan because my daughter was having a baby, and this was her second baby, and she was carrying really low, and she was, like, convinced that she was going to have this baby, like, any day. And so I was like, we got to get up there early. Like, she needs help with the other child who's, like, not even 2 yet. So it took, like, months and months and months of planning. And Sean actually had to, like, remortgage his house to get a car because our car wouldn't have made it up to Michigan. And it was a lot of work to get this trip planned and get my meds refilled, because some of them, you know, like Valium is one of the things that I have to take because of the muscle spasms, and getting a doctor to refill Valium for more than 30 days is, like, almost impossible. And so, you know, like, that was one of the things, like, we had to, you know, strategize, was getting all the meds refilled so we could fill them up in Michigan, because we knew we were going to be there more than a month. And I had a couple of seizures right before we left, and that was new. And they were, like, seizures, like, you know, the seizures where you know, you're shaking all over the place and you can't control yourself. And normally a person, like, doesn't, they don't, God, I look just like a mess today. When a person has a seizure, like, they don't remember it. Well, I was wide awake for the whole thing, and I remember all of it, and it went on for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I thought it was never going to stop. Like, I thought I was going to be stuck like this forever. It was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. And so we went to the doctor, and they started me on seizure medicines right away, and I had another small one a couple days later. And then I didn't have any seizures like that again until last night. But okay, let me make sure that I tell the story right, because I get confused really easily. So we went up to Michigan. We took our time going. We took, like, 5 days to get up there, and we got up there 3 weeks before she was due, thinking that she was going to have the baby early, and she ended up going, like, overdue. So for 3 weeks, we were all kind of like, you know, so, you know, I think today is going to be the day, you know, and in the meantime, like, you know, everybody is, like, wondering, like, when is she going to have this baby? Like, she was huge, and the baby was so low, like, it looked like she was going to have it any second. And and so she ends up going overdue, and she was just like, please, 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 I don't want to have this baby on Halloween. Like, I don't want to have a kid that has a birthday on Halloween. Like, I don't want that their birthday associated with that, you know. And of course, the baby ends up being born on Halloween. And this was probably the most, like, physical activity that I've had, taking care of the 2-year-old Olivia. Which you guys maybe remember, you know, when my first grandchild was born, like, we still didn't know what was wrong with me. We didn't know I had my neck was broken in 2 places, and, you know, that I had this brain herniation and all this, and we had gone up to Michigan, and we were there for the birth, and I was actually, like, in the delivery room for that. This time, the parents just wanted to do it by themselves, which was really awesome. And so we brought Olivia in, and, you know, her new baby sister was, like, not what she was expecting at all. And so, like, she started crying, and it was just like, oh my God, like, it was so stressful. Like, it was a really magical time to spend so much time with her, because I've only seen her twice since she was born. Like, the first time we were up there, and then when they brought her down here and she walked for the first time down here. And so we got to spend, like, you know, almost 6 weeks up there with her, and I got to wake her up every morning and put her down for her nap, and wake her up from her nap and put her to bed at night and give her baths. And they had this, like, crazy cat that I fell in love with, and it was so magical. And the weirdest thing happened, though, while we were there, and I think it had to do with how much physical activity I was doing, because for whatever reason, I guess you kind of, like, automatically, like, being a mother, you go into, like, mom mode, which I haven't been in a really long time, you know. And I was waking up at, like, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, before the sun even came up, and I would go outside and I would walk. I would pace on the driveway to wake myself up, because it takes me about an hour or two to wake up every day, like, to be with it, because I wanted to be, like, with it and able to, like, function and help, you know, take care of the kids, and then when she had the baby, like, to be on point with everything and not be like a zombie like I am sometimes, and like I am right now, but I'm post-ictal because I had this horrible seizure yesterday. And so about 3 or 4 days into the stay, maybe a little bit more than that, we were in the kitchen and I was doing dishes, which is not something that I usually do. I have a hard time doing really any physical activity at all. And I was doing dishes and I got this feeling that somebody was standing behind me, and I turned around and I saw this guy standing behind me, and he was a ghost, and there was like literally like electrons shooting through him like stars, and I could tell like how old he was. Like he was like 35, and he was happy, and he was doing his own thing, and it wasn't like a ghost like you could interact with. And before you turn this off and say like Rad Chick's crazy, like you have to hear this whole story, because there is a medical explanation for all of this. So, you know, I get this like incredible like picture in my mind of who this guy is and all of this stuff about him. And I am not one of these people who is even interested really in paranormal anything. And when people try to talk to me about like ghost stuff, I'm always kind of like, you know, I'm just, if it's not a science thing, I'm just not really into it. I mean, I understand, you know, around Halloween, like it's fun, ghost stories and all that, but I'm just not into it. And I've never had any kind of like experiences. I've had hallucinations before I had the neck surgery. I would hallucinate that there were people standing next to me, and I would turn and there was nobody there, and they told me that was part of the Chiari thing. And it's very common to have those hallucinations. And it never scared me, it just caught me off guard a lot. And it happened quite frequently, but not as frequently and not anywhere near as vividly as it was happening at their house. And they're renting this really old house. It was like built in 1940, and it's big, and there's another guy that lives upstairs. And it's, you can tell the house has been added on to a bunch of times, and like the windows are so old that like the lead, like the glass panes are actually like melting, like because the glass is so old. You know, it's like all original stuff in this house. Because then I started getting kind of interested in the history of the house, because I'd never seen a ghost before. And certainly not one that was standing like right next to me. And at the time there were all these other people in the kitchen, and I looked around, and I don't want to alarm anybody. And Olivia, the little girl, you know, my granddaughter is there, and I don't want to scare anybody. And, you know, I look at the cat, and the cat's acting normal. And I have heard before, like sometimes animals will act weird if there's really a ghost around. So I'm thinking, okay, the cat's normal. Like everyone else seems like fine. Everything seems fine. And then all of a sudden, I turned back, and he was gone. So I was kind of like, okay, wow, like maybe I just, maybe I took my meds wrong. Like maybe I just hallucinated that. But wow, it was so vivid. It was just so vivid. And then it started happening like continuously, like almost on a daily basis. I was seeing people in the house, and sometimes it was the same guy in the kitchen, and sometimes it was different people. There were guys, it was always men, and there were a couple guys, one that would walk through the backyard, one that would lounge around on the chairs on the front porch. There was one time that I saw a man walking through the backyard that actually looked like he was walking through an oval, like a rip in time that was undulating. And I thought, holy shit, this is how people disappear. Like, they walk into one of these rips. Maybe this is how people disappear. Like, missing 411. It was so real looking to me. And so I told Sean that this was happening, and Sean was like, just uber interested. He's like, tell me everything, like, when does it happen? You got to tell me. And when this is happening, try to we're not telling the kids, because obviously they'll want to move like the minute we tell them, because they had already joked around about things like, cabinets shutting by themselves and doors opening and closing by themselves and things like that, and that they thought the house was haunted. And I'm seeing ghosts all over the place. And there was even a little kid that would run up and down the stairs of the front porch when I'd be standing outside late at night if I was smoking a cigar, which I know it's terrible and I'm not supposed to do, but I do anyway. And I would see this little kid all the time, and he's the only one that I seemed like he could see me. Everyone else seemed like I was seeing them in their time. Like I was catching a glimpse of something that had happened long ago. Like I was getting a view into a different time. So I didn't tell anybody this, and I have not told anyone in my family about this. But I did tell my shrink about this, because it's been bugging me ever since we got back. I couldn't believe that this experience has happened. I've never had anything like this happen. And, my shrink, who I've been seeing for about a year and who's been incredibly helpful and who I have a really great relationship with, he sat there, and I told him pretty much this whole story that I just told you, and he said to me, unequivocally, you're having temporal lobe seizures. This is absolutely what you're having, and this goes along with all of these other symptoms that you've been having that these doctors haven't been able to pinpoint. Some of them have said it's autonomic neuropathy, and some of them have said, that it's different CNS things, and it's all related to central nervous system disorders, but it's actually damage to the temporal lobes that sit back here. And it was weird because right before we left for Michigan, like a couple days before, I had been packing and I had been bending over a suitcase, and I had a curtain that came over my vision, and it actually stayed. And I have a lot of problems with my vision and focusing, and I see a lot of like weird stuff all the time because I have damage to the visual cortex, which is in the back of my head. And your cerebellum sits right underneath it, and that's the thing that was sliding down into my spinal column and then going back up and sliding down and going back up, and that's what they did the brain decompression for. So it's almost like a suction cup that keeps your cerebellum where it's supposed to be. But it happened so much, and then afterward I had a lot of problems with the pressure in my head being high, and I still had problems with that happening. Even last night when I had this seizure, like I had fluid started leaking out of my ears, like the pressure in my head gets extremely high, and that's causing, possibly permanent damage to some of the lobes of my brain. And I need to see a neurologist who specializes in like head and neck injury victims, who has a really good understanding of all of these things, because I'm not like a typical neurology patient. I need someone who specializes in this, and that's what has been so difficult. We have an appointment with one, but I can't get in to see him until March of 2019. And I've actually been waiting for the appointment since July, and a lot has happened since. Like, I've gotten considerably worse since, but there's just nobody else to see. So, if indeed what my shrink says is true, and these are temporal lobe seizures that are causing, because they cause a lot of other things, and in fact, there's a school of thought that temporal lobe seizures are the affliction of what Moses and Joan of Arc and Joseph Smith and Mohammed and a lot of like very popular religious figures throughout time who've had very vivid religious visions. They call it religiosity, I think it's called, that they suffered from temporal lobe seizures. If indeed that's what it is, I have to start keeping track of when I have visual disturbances, what else is going on, because I have little things that are going on all the time that make it like really difficult to function on a daily basis. And like I can't bend over, I can't walk very far, like just walking to the table and back, like that's pretty much the most exercise I can do without like a walker or a cane or like without supervision. If we go to a restaurant or anything, I use a walker. I have to, because there's a chance that while I'm swallowing food in the restaurant, something will get set off in my neck that will cause me to have an attack, and they won't be able to get me out of the restaurant without like carrying me out of the restaurant. So with a walker, at least like a walker will have a seat, at least the kind that I have has a seat in it, and I can sit on it and I can get pushed out of the restaurant. I mean, that's how bad this situation has affected my life, even though, a lot of people think like I had surgery and I got fixed. Well, yeah, like now I'm not gonna like die a horrible death and I have in a very painful way, like all of the stuff that I was going through before, but my life is far from normal. And it's, like focusing and memory are also things that go along with not only the Chiari but the temporal lobe disorder. And then if I am having these temporal lobe seizures in addition to the cortical seizures, and the cortical ones are the ones where your body actually like moves around a lot. The temporal ones are ones where like your temperature goes crazy and your eyes might go back and forth really fast. That happens to me sometimes when I'm talking to people, and to me, I feel like I just blank out. I'll actually feel like things get dark and then almost like I fall asleep and wake up. But if people are looking at me, they tell me that my eyes move back and forth really fast. And that's not a good sign. That's a sign that there is like some brain damage there. I have a long road ahead of me of getting all of these things assessed, and I'm glad that I'm able to actually get this video done, because I've been promising you guys an update for a while, and I do have quite a bit of material done, surprisingly, on these exposés that I promised. What I'm stuck on is the background, which I feel is absolutely necessary, of some of the individuals and the individual organizations that I want to cover, in terms of like their taxes, in terms of police records, and I'm talking about certain individuals, like legal records and things like that I can't have access to without hiring somebody to access those for me, and I can't do that with the money that I'm getting per month. Like, I think it's $112 a month. So that's not enough to put a PI on retainer. And in the meantime, and not to really frighten people too much, because, I do live with Sean. Most of you know Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole. And he takes, very good care of me and makes sure that I'm safe at all times. But we've had a couple of really crazy things happen. And just last night we found out that another cat has been killed in our neighborhood, and it was thrown over a fence just 2 doors down from our house. And something that happened after Loren and I had done our Wigner interview is the next night my cat was killed right in front of my house. And I was actually sitting in the window, and I never told anybody this. My family could certainly attest to it. It was our beloved Mama Kitty, whose offspring, she's the one who also had the mutated kitten, whose video was famous or infamous all over YouTube. She was an indoor-outdoor cat, and she was out that night as she usually was, and my window actually faced the front walk of the apartments where I lived, so I could see everybody that was coming and going, as well as the carports and the apartments that faced us. And that night there was absolutely no traffic outside whatsoever, except for my daughter, who actually lived, because we lived across from Oakland University, and she was a student there, as well as my other daughters that lived with me. She was going to the store, and she stopped by to see if there was anything that I needed. And she saw the cat, and I saw the cat when she left. She came in, and she was like, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to CVS. Is there anything that you need?" And I was like, "No, that's all right," because I never buy anything from CVS, because it's 3 or 4 times the price of anywhere else in JP Morgan Chase, that whole deal. So anyway, she leaves and goes to the store, and I'm sitting in the window, and I remember listening, and we had like 9 hours of recorded interview that we had recorded, and there were interruptions. I had to leave at one point and pick up my daughter from work and come back, and we had to take breaks, and, we had to get tea because our voices were getting hoarse, and, we had to discuss some of the layout because there was so much material to cover. So there was a lot of editing that went into that interview, and I had just started the editing process, and I did my first run through where I listened to the entire thing all in one chunk. And I was listening, and I was sitting there like this, looking out the window, and I saw the cat walk by, and then about probably 10 or 15 minutes later, I see my daughter pull up from a different direction, and she comes back into the house because she was going to come and just hang out with me. And she asked if Mama Kitty was around, and I said, oh, she's outside somewhere. And as she went to leave, she saw this furry thing in our parking lot laying there, and I hear her scream, Mom, Mom, Mom. And I could tell that it was one of those screams where something's really wrong. And I put on my my boots and my coat, and I went outside, and the cat had an indentation in its head that was probably about this big around and about this deep. And the cat was actually still alive. It was almost like that gun, that cattle thing that they used in No Country for Old Men. That thing. I can't remember what that thing is called. The stun gun they used to kill the cattle. But it didn't go all the way through. And this was the day after we had recorded the interview. And I don't know what kind of instrument could have injured the cat. The cat was not hit by a car. There were no cars on the road. I knew because I was looking outside the entire time. I didn't see anybody walk by. I had seen the cat earlier, and she was fine. In fact, she was still alive, and I picked her up and brought her into the house. She actually died as I walked into the house. And while we were in Michigan, then we had all kinds of strange things that happened. I was SWAT teamed and things like that multiple times during the following of Fukushima. I've talked about that in other interviews, and I'm not going to get into that here. But we were definitely followed, my daughter and I, and when she was 9 months pregnant, in a store while we were in Michigan. Most definitely we were followed by either it was a cop or a fed, and he was riding in an Oakland County Sheriff's car. And I know the guy that he was riding with because I dated one of the Oakland County Sheriffs when I lived there. And he made it very, very obvious to me that he was following us. He actually bumped into me 3 times while we were in the store over a period of about 20-25 minutes while we were in there. And I was really kind of disturbed by that. He was making it a point of showing I could get to you or I could get to your kids. I really don't know what his point was except for that. And nothing else really happened. We were all kind of on guard. Well, Sean especially, after that happened. And nothing else happened until last night when we found out that were killed. And it was thrown over a fence, and it was garroted and hung over a fence 2 doors down. And I don't know if this was just a random attack or if that was somebody was mad at that neighbor. And in fact, Sean is probably going to go over there tonight and interview that neighbor and find out what's going on to get to the bottom of that, because it's a really upsetting situation. And the house where the cat was left, that's not their cat. But there's little kids that live there, and they saw the dead cat, and they're very upset. And a lot of people that live in this area know about it and are very upset. So, a lot of weirdness, a lot of stressful kind of things that are going on in the background that that most people I don't tell about, and I wouldn't put this out on YouTube. This is why I like Patreon, because of the privacy, because people actually like are paying for this kind of content, like for a more like personal or private like view into what is going on. And you think this is something, you just wait until you hear these exposés that I've put together. But I am not going to be able to release them until I get the information that I need to complete them and make them a very thorough quality expose, like the material that you were used to getting from me before this happened to me. That hasn't changed. I have not changed that style. This style may be a little different. I'm a little slower. I'm not quite as organized. You know, I look a little bit different. I talk a little bit different. But when I put together an article or an expose or something, I'm going to knock it out of the park. I can promise you that. So thank you very much for believing in me and being there for me. And I can't tell you how much it means to me. And I hope and wish for all of you to have very, very happy and healthy above all, New Year. I hope that we all do, because that's first and foremost on my mind. Despite all of the things that we are being faced with nowadays. So take care, everyone, and I will put out another update as soon as I can. Probably within the next few weeks, when the neighbor's not watering, because I really like that spot out there a lot.